Welcome back with me, Boost to the channel, Mission Doge. For today, I'm doing the mid-season, and I'm going to try and make it as fast as I can here because, well, I guess I'll start the video with this. I am probably, going to do it a bit sooner than I thought I would. I am probably basically quitting undercards at this point. I say quitting, in a hard sense. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'll never come back, I hate this game, I'll never play it again. And it's also not that I will not be making any undercards videos while I've quote-unquote quit. I do think I still owe you a decent amount of custom cards videos, and I don't mind doing custom cards even if I'm not playing the game. I do like talking about cards and undercards, I just don't like playing it, to be honest, at the moment. So, yeah, that's where I am right now. So yeah, I'll get that out of the way straight away, and as well as that, I'm probably going to see if I can do this all in one take, because we already, I just put out a video yesterday, so I don't really want to have to edit another one of these after I just did that yesterday. And that means I get to put more time into highly edited videos anyway, instead of this stuff. Because to be fair, as much as I do want to put quality into my videos, those patches I've been doing more recently, with like cuts and timestamps for everything, it ends up taking another like 4 hours or whatever to get them out and done. And in the end, that's all just for finding timestamps and like making cuts, and it's not even that different than if it was unedited. So like I'm thinking I might, not do that this time. Anyway, I've spent not long enough just saying all that. New mid-season, and the mid-season is honestly probably bigger than how they started the season. I mean, for one, we actually have new cards. We got Lancer's Bike Bed, and we got Ruins Tree. Ruins Tree I'm going to start with because I have less to say about it, so I can get out of the way quicker. Is actually basically Old Noel back. Of course, Noel got changed to a legendary with a new effect. And I didn't complain about that because the new legendary effect of Noel is one of my favourite card effects in the game. But I did feel a little bit disappointed since I did like the old Noel. But here we have the old Noel's effect right back. So we get to have the best of both worlds. So I imagine it will just go straight back to being used how it was with normal Noel. In the past, it would obviously be used in Stally Controlly decks to heal a bunch of health. So yeah, especially if they got hand buff mechanics. Lancer Bike's Bed, pardon me, is a 2-cost 2/3 with an ability that whenever you draw a monster, give it +1 attack. That's pretty good. Like, a 2-cost 2/3 is good stats, of course. Frogget is a 2-cost 2/3 with no abilities, and yet it does see some play every now and then. So, yeah, pardon me. Yeah, I think this looks like a promising card because, well, don't get me wrong, I recognize this ability is very minor. If it was a health buff, maybe it'd be a bit of a bigger deal, but as an attack buff, on most random units, it's going to help, but not be all that significant. It would be much more significant on things that are already high health, low attack, that could make good trades if they just had a bit more damage on them. Stuff like Ultraman, which we'll get to later, which can potentially be a 3-cost 2/7 taunt, which even if it's 3-cost 2/7, it tends to be a little bit weak because, it's only 2 attack, and they don't have any persistent threat to them. But give them +1 attack, on top of that, 3/7, now for 3, that's a bit more intimidating. Anyway. But the problem is, of course, you can't rely on this buff landing on those things. It is a little bit better, though, if it lands on charge monsters, which if you're running a lot of them, that could be more reliable. So I'm imagining Lancer Bike's Beds is going to be used in aggressive decks that tend to run a lot of kind of over-the-top reach to close out the game early with, charge monsters. So yeah, it also might be run a lot with any kind of effects that help you cycle cards, as in, like, acceleration and bravery, or maybe even yarn ball, ways to remove cards to draw more cards, because of course the new replace cards will have the attack buff. So yeah, looks decent. Getting into the other changes, we got a change to gameplay. I don't think I've ever seen something like this listed in a patch before. Shock now triggers before the spell that triggered the shock resolves. Interesting. Gonna get through this a bit quicker, as I say. Gas cost gone down from 13 to 12. Okay, don't think that changes much, but hey, I guess gas is less bad now. Politics Bear +1 health. might be interesting to see this. Maybe they genuinely see a little bit of niche play competitively. I don't think it's too out there. It is a decent engine. Monster Kid has gone down from a 3 cost to a 2 cost, although it lost 1 attack, thank God. I really like this card, and I have tried using it a lot, but every time I try using it, I just feel like even in the perfect scenario where I have a swarmy deck that can easily kill its own monsters to trigger the dust effect, I feel like Monster Kid consistently disappoints me, so I'm glad that it costs less now. Sugar Pot has gotten +1 extra attack. That's nice. It could definitely... Well, I say it could definitely use more. I suppose they've got to be a bit wary about where the line is, but Sugar Pot is an interesting card. I've used it a decent amount, and I was thinking in my head, in theory, couldn't this be broken? Because you could stack 3 buffs with Sugar Pot onto 1 card, and that is +6/+6 before you even play it. Now, obviously you're probably going to run even more hand buff effects in your deck if you are running that kind of deck, but even assuming you can't, +6/+6 on the kind of cards that get huge benefits from being that big in the first place is already enough to be game winning. I mean, +6/+6 on a Chris before you even play it, +6/+6 on a casual Undyne that you then use the Vessel on. You can see how these are game winning plays, so I was thinking that Sugar Pot might be really strong, but then when I actually played it, I was consistently disappointed with it. And it mostly came down to, I realized that the downside of Sugar Pot was that up front you had no taunt and no good stats for cost on it. But I didn't truly realize how much it hurt until I started playing with Sugar Pot. And consistently, any deck that used Sugar Pot, if I could survive the early game, I almost certainly would win the late game. But I would lose usually early on because the Sugar Pot would just be pathetic at fighting for the board. So, yeah. Other than that, though, there's also Parsnip getting buffed to have 4 attack instead of 3. When I first saw this, I already thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. Wasn't Parsnip that 4-cost 3/3 that paralyzes a monster? But it turns out it was already a 3/4, so now it's actually a 4/4. 4/4 for 4 with a paralyze is not bad, and it even has the little extras that 1, it's a plan, and 2, if you're targeting something that's already paralyzed, you can do 2 damage to it instead. I don't think the 2 damage thing is that relevant, but still, 4 cost 4/4 paralyze. Like, that's not a joke, I don't think. Let me think for a second. I'm just thinking that we don't have many cards in undercards that are high tempo that can paralyze. So I feel like we don't usually get to appreciate just how strong Paralyze can be when used to fight for early board control. It rarely happens, but the few times I do get a nasty Paralyze on me early on when I'm fighting for the board, it can be devastating. So I think that, honestly, Parsnip might end up being a seriously good tempo card, which, you know, might be surprising, but I genuinely think it could happen. I mean, it's definitely blowing Doggo out the water. That's a 3-cost 2/4 conditional free something, and not even something of your choice. It has to be in front of you. Whereas this is a better statted, honestly, option, which is unconditional and can target whatever you want and is a plant. It's even better than Sushi Pants, I would say, as well, which is similar to Doggo, +1 health on it, except it's unconditional technically. The only condition is a deck building one where you have to run no haste or charges in your deck. But yeah, it's a 3-cost 2/5, paralyze, the opposite monster. But yeah, I'd say that Parsnip is better than both of those. So yeah, Parsnip maybe a genuine good tempo card now. Shovels times 999 got a buff, fills both players' hands with shovels, but yours costs 1 less now. A little bit sad this cheapens the effect of Cy Birdley's IQ artifact on this, because that's one of my favourite synergies with this. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be significant. At the end of the day, this does help the card out a lot, and I do think that Shovels is a really cool card the way it is right now, and I wish it was better. So yeah, I'll take that. Striped Bird got a buff. It no longer loses 1 health if you attack with it on the turn it's played. I don't use this card much. I'm not gonna talk too much about that. I was gonna say I'm not a fan of that, but I don't play this card enough to really comment. I guess I just don't like dealing with it. Susie Plush has now been buffed. There's a decent amount of cards this patch that have had their program removed, and this is one of them. Susie Plush no longer needs to pay 3 extra to do its if you have 10 or less HP effect to deal 2 damage to all enemies instead of dealing 2 damage to you. So yeah, maybe Susie Plush ends up actually being a pretty good self-damage card now. Ultiman got a rework, which is basically an outright buff. Ultiman you would not be blamed for completely forgetting the existence of, because it's a very bad card. I would say it was one of the worst cards in the game back when it was first added. It was a 3-cost 2/4 that would burn an ally monster to get +3 health. And when I first saw this card, I was very confused because this was some very strange wording. And when it said burn, I thought it meant burn a card in your hand. And I'm like, oh, that might be pretty good. I mean, it is only a 3/2/7 taunt, but at the end of the day, burning one card in your hand to get a 3/2/7 taunt, that sounds pretty good. But no, actually, it's not a card in your hand. It means a monster on your board, which is a bit confusing, but yeah, that's how it works. And since it's burn, it will not trigger dusts, so you can't use this as a self-sacrifice tool. It is just a 3-cost 2/7 that forces you to sacrifice one of your own units, and you do not get any benefit for the sacrifice, even if that unit had a dust effect. They don't even go to the dust pile. So, I've got to say, you know, when I looked at Ultiman before, I'm like, why would I use this? I get it's a 3-cost 2/7 taunt, but 2 attack is not very threatening, even if it has all that 7 health. 3 attack maybe, but 2 attack is not a lot. I guess just to have a big wall of taunt for cheap, but it's not really cheap, is it? Because, again, you need to burn a monster to get all that health. And if you're burning a monster, you're probably already spending a lot in the first place to get Ultiman down. Unless you're in the business of, like, running tiny froggets to play with the Ultiman, so you can play him for 3 still, and just essentially, quote-unquote, burn a card in your hand to get the plus, like, the 2/7. But then you have to have both cards of those cards in your hand exactly for that to work. And then wouldn't a deck that likes big taunts for cheap rather be a control deck? And if it's a control deck, would you really want to run tiny froggets in it and stuff like that? You can see where this all falls apart. All that aside, I always thought that it was much more realistic for Ultiman to be found useful in a tempo-based deck. And that's why I was kind of disappointed he only had 2 attack while not having any kind of persistent threat to him if he's left alive. Now, he's got 3 attack and 3 health to start, so 6 health with the buff. Now, it sounds like a small change, and it might be a small change, but I think he's gone now from one of the worst cards in the game to at least a respectable tempo card. I think a 3/3/6 is way more relevant than a 3/2/7. I mean, 3/6 was the stat line of Bloody Tree before it got nerfed, so yeah. I think that this could genuinely be a decent card. I am not going to go as far as to say it's going to be great. At the end of the day, it still looks like it's going to be a, like, finicky and picky thing to have to, like, as I say, activate this effect, like, when it's convenient in a way that's tempo efficient without overspending. I was just trying to think while I was talking about this, if there was any cards at all that you could get a benefit from Ultiman's Sacrifice, considering it's a burn, so dust doesn't work. And I just realised, I think that Hanging Spider would still work, since that isn't a dust, it's delay if this is dead, which I think would count burned. So, I guess you could use Ultiman with spiders if you wanted to. But as I say, I think it's more likely he'll work with tempo than control, so probably not. Anyway, though, yeah, Ultiman might be decent now for tempo. Spider Reporter got a small but very welcome change. Same effect as always, except now the Spider Croissant being added to your deck is no longer a magic, it's a dust ability. The reason why that's important, you might think it wouldn't be, considering you usually attack this in instantly anyway, and so you get it instantly regardless. Well, it's important because it means that Spider Flower can now actually trigger that ability, because, you know, it's a dust, not a magic anymore. And I'm very glad that that's how this is turning out, because, as I say, I think it's really sad that Spider Flower is such a cool card, and it's basically just for plants. I mean, it can target spiders, but why would you want to use it on spiders? You got no good targets. At least now you have one good target. Now, in fairness, you can use it on Spider Croissants, and that's a good target, but obviously by that point in the game, you must have shuffled one into your deck and gotten it in your hand, and then been able to activate the synergy. It's a lot of hoops to jump through. You can also use it on the donuts, but honestly, the donuts aren't even that good. I mean, they don't get the delay ability, so they are just a 4-cost 3/4 haste taunt if you summon them with the, well, technically not 4 costs because you didn't pay for them, but you know what I mean. They don't have any ability on them then. So yeah, I'm going to do Gardener Asgore in a second, because I don't know why these two spiders are split up. Hanging Spiders got changed. It's no longer a 2-cost 3/2, it is now a 3-cost 1/2, and its effect update is still a delay, but now the Spider Croissant is summoned instantly when it dies, and the Spider Donut is added to your hand. I think before it was to add 2 Spider Donuts to your hand and 2 Spider Croissants to your deck, if I remember right. I think that was the old effect. So, yeah, now it's got a more immediate effect. Yeah, I think this is probably a little bit worse overall, and you might be like, wait, worse? Because, basically it costs more, so that means it's a little bit more time consuming to set this all up. It does give more benefit up front, but if you're playing spiders, you're playing for the long game, so you probably would have preferred getting 4 2 donuts, 2 croissants, as opposed to 1 croissant, 1 donut, but you get the croissant instantly, instead of getting it much later. Of course, it reduces anti-fatigue, and of course, it's not so relevant, but the stats are also worse. Anyway, Gardener Asgore has gotten a weird change. I think the devs might be trying to make plant control a thing, which sounds weird, but it might work. I definitely don't see it becoming better than plant tempo right now, unless more big changes come, but I really think they're trying to push a plant control deck here. The reason why I say that is because Gardener Asgore's effect here does not sound like a very powerful one for tempo. He's losing 1 health to get a new effect where he'll summon an ally Red Flower and give it +1/+1 for every 5 plants in your dust pile. Only +1/+1 for every 5 plants dead. You're going to need to get a lot of your plants dead for that to actually be a significant amount of stats. Now, after all that, in fairness, Red Flower does have transparency, and considering Gardener Asgore is an epic, you could potentially have a deck where you have Purple Mascot, Gardener Asgore is your only epic, a whole bunch of plants that generate green flowers with haste, so you can just stack your dust pile with plants, and then summon, I don't know, 7/7 or 8/8 or 9/9 red flowers that, have transparency, so the opponent can't really do anything about them hitting face. That could be a deck, potentially. As I say, the other option here is this is for a control deck that just uses plants, and that might sound weird, and I do think it does sound a little bit goofy compared to the tempo-based one, but there are tools there. I mean, obviously, we just got Ruins Tree. Parsnip can be used in a control sense, of course, Paralyze. Vegetoid is obviously a pretty good heal, honestly, considering it's a free card. You don't see it very often, and I do think it is, just below, proper competitive, but I don't think that Vegetoid is a bad card, so it might be able to fit into a plant-based control deck. More importantly, there's the Christmas tree card that got reworked last patch, which, that's a lot of stats you can get with a plant synergy. It could be more control plants becoming a thing, especially because they seem to have a kind of sub-theme of healing. So, yeah. Anyway, Dumpster got changed, no longer got a program, now they just draw a base card. Literally just 5-cost 5/6 draw a base card. I like it. It used to be program 1, delay, draw a base card and give it -1 cost. I much prefer having less upfront cost for a tempo-based card. Cafe Jukebox, this is unfortunately a change I'm not a fan of. It no longer retrieves spells you've played this game, it now retrieves enemy monsters that have died this game. I'm not a fan of this, because I feel like this is just objectively worse than Jukebox now. I can only imagine this change happened because someone found a way to make Cafe Jukebox stupid. I could definitely see it. There's definitely some spells which, being able to recur them enough times, might have gotten too much. But this, I don't know. Here's the thing. When are you going to rather take something from your opponent's dust pile than one from yours? Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, there could be this situation or that situation. But when I say that, I don't mean, special exceptions. I mean, when are you going to have a deck where, on average, it's going to be better to take from your opponent's dust pile than yours? And keep in mind, when I say take, I don't mean it leaves the opponent's dust pile. So you can't say, it's dust pile disruption. I don't know why you would want Cafe Jukebox here. The only thing I could think is to pinch their DT, but it doesn't let you pinch DTs. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think it should. That would be really annoying if you just fish for DTs with it. But that's like the only way I could think this is better than Jukebox. I mean, at the end of the day, it can't be too bad a card. It is at the end of the day just a 6-cost, 5/6 taunt, whatever. But I do not see like a single situation where I would rather have this over Jukebox, unless the only situation I could think of is a situation where you have a deck with almost no monsters in it, but you want to shuffle enemy monsters into it. Nah, I don't see it. And lastly, for the reworks, at least for the monsters, Memory Keeper got reworked. It now sets a monster's health to 2 instead of 1, and gives it dodge 1. And its shock now deals 2 damage to the highest health enemy monster instead of a random one. I like this change. It makes it hard to kill the one that you give dodge, because of course, now it's got a low health total, and this targets the highest HP enemy monster. But it also makes it so that it's less random and more skill-based using Memory Keeper. And it obviously encourages you to use the effect to kill the monster you set the HP of to 2, considering that, well, it's got 2 and you deal 2 damage. It's just perfect. Anyway, getting into the nerfs, Innkeeper's lost 1 health. I'm guessing they wanted to more heavily punish permanent health gain, so I like that. Metaton Fountain's been reverted to its original stat line when it was first reworked, 1/5 instead of 2/4. That's good. Glad to see that change. More healing, less board control for a card that's mostly just exists for healing. The Reflection got a nerf, which I can't comment on, really. I haven't played the Reflection since the rework. I am guessing that Storley decks just got away with the shuffle too easily and won games off of fatigue. So now it takes 5 more monsters in both dust piles, which seems like a small change, but sure. But it still burns both those piles to add a copy of the enemy hand to your deck, except DT cards. Kara has lost the instant silence and kill on it the second you play it. It's now gone back to just giving you the Genocide artifact. However, to compensate, the real knives you get from the Genocide artifact that kill a monster every turn now cost 2 instead of 3. Big Mouth now has gotten back up to 7 health, but now his effect is a magic and turn start rather than magic and turn end. This means that you won't get 2 monsters killed on the first turn you play it, you'll only get 1. But you'll still get a monster killed every turn you play it, including the first turn. So, yeah. Honestly, this change might not even be that bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do agree that this is probably an overall nerf, but it is back up to 7 health, and it is still, in the long term, basically going to do the same amount of monster killing. It's just that you get less up front. Snail Pen also got a nerf, which is interesting. Snail Pen's old effect was a 3-cost 2/2 that would add an exact copy, as in vessel-style copy, of every single snail that you had on the board. But, obviously, to try and prevent people from breaking the game with this, they made it so it could only copy 1-cost snails, like base 1-cost. For that reason, it couldn't, copy things like Business Snail or Thrashing Machine. It could only get the proper 1-cost ones. However, it has been nerfed, so I can only guess that there were still ways you could get these 1-cost ones too big with exact copies, which I could believe. I mean, don't get me wrong, this does sound a little bit out there, but certainly possible that you would have, let's say, a Burning Snail. Got it to a 4/1, played it on a full board of snails, traded in your snails. Now you play 3 more, got a bunch of health buffs on it. Now, I don't know, it's a 4/4, and then Snail Pen, and now you got like a 1-cost 4/4 snail in your hand. Then you play it again, and now it's a 7/4, and now you get another 3 health, and now it's a 7/7, and then you Snail Pen again, get it up to a 10/10, until eventually it's a 13/13, that's going to become a 16/13 with haste the turn you play it, if there's 3 snails on the board, which only costs 1 to play, and then you put the vessel on it. And maybe even 0 cost because of Blue Snail. And you have a 0 cost, like, what did I say? A 0 cost 16/13 haste. Maybe that was happening. I can't tell you, but yeah. Either way, its new effect is that it adds a copy of every snail, no requirements, but they are not exact copies. So you can't get that kind of recursive buff kind of thing. But this is not all bad news. This does mean now that you can copy Business Snail, which Business Snail is one of the most important cards in the Snail deck, so it's nice that you can do that. And you can also now obviously copy Thrashing Machines, so that's nice too. T-set got a buff. The T-set comes from Crack Table. Crack Table, 4 cost 4/4. Delay, add a T-set to your hand. It costs 0. It costs 1 normally, but it costs 0 if you have less health. And it used to heal 3 health, now it heals 4, but the rest of it's the same. We already covered Real Knife is from the Genocide artifact. Pezza Time got a very interesting change. It's gone from a 4 cost to a 2 cost, and it's completely different now. It adds a copy of a damaged ally non-determination monster to your hand with its current health, and it loses. It costs 1 less for every health point missing. That's pretty good. Like, okay. I imagine there are better uses for it than this, but this is just my off the top of my head use for this. You get a P-Cris on the board. Through trades or self-damage cards or whatever, you get it down to 1 health. You Pezza Time it, and now you have a 1 cost P-Cris in hand. Now you might be like, okay, that's cool, but like, you go through all that effort, it's probably not worth it. And then you Vessel it. And then you have, what, 4, well, you've just played it to have to Vessel it, so I suppose not 4. 3 1-cost P-Crises. That's a death sentence if you ever get any board presence with even small units. So, you know, you can see where my concerns with this card come in, but it looks cool. It's a good thing it can't do DT monsters. Would instantly break the game if it could do DT monsters. Anyway, wait, is this an exact? No. I was going to say, is it an exact copy? Because otherwise the damage wouldn't be retained, but I'm guessing that's why it adds the extra with its current HP. Anyway, Ultimate Heal finally got gutted. Mixed feelings about this, but generally positive. I was excited for Ultimate Heal because I was hoping it would be a card that is used in control decks as a way to add more value to every single card you play in the long term for a scary upfront investment of gold where you leave yourself vulnerable. And then later in the game you'd be playing all these giant units because of all those ultimate heals you risked playing at the start. That was what I was hoping Ultimate Heal would be. But then inevitably, instead it was used for OTKs, using of course the swapping of attack and health to get ridiculously high attack numbers on just about anything you want. So yeah, fully behind this nerf, this rework. It's been reworked into a card that still looks decent, although it does look a little bit underwhelming. You draw 3 monsters and give them all +2 HP. In fairness, depending on what kind of deck you have, maybe giving all 3 of those +2 HP could be pretty significant. There definitely are cards out there that could get a surprising boost even just from a little bit of extra health, so I'm not ruling it out. It might be decent. A 4-cost draw card is just, you know what I mean, it's undercards. Like, Exploration is a 3-cost draw 3, and it's not even a good card. So, like, yeah. And Feast got nerfed to go up to 3 cost. Can't really comment on it, because I'd never really played with the new Feast. Anyway, artifact balancing, Shawm Shop, effect update, turn end. If you have 3 or less cards in your deck, give all monsters in your hand +2/+3 and taunt, then disable this. So I believe this is all the same, except now it's +2/+3 with taunt instead of +2/+2 with no taunt. Absolutely deserved. I'm honestly a little bit surprised they took away the +3 in the first place and knocked it down to +2, because the whole concern with Shawm Shop, which was a well-founded concern, by the way, I will stand by that, the whole reason people were worried about Shawm Shop was because charge OTK combos with it. So the attack doesn't really matter, it's the health that matters. Now I suppose you could argue, oh, what about magic and all that? What about swapping health values? But there aren't that many charge cards in the game with high health values in the first place. It's basically like Cop Undyne and Ultima Thrash, which are already, that's like some expensive ones, you know, that's not cheap. Yeah, I don't think that was really ever going to be a concern. So I think it always should have been +2/+3. Taunt I didn't even expect, but I'll take it. I don't see why it would be a problem, so yeah. Shawm Shop might be a bit better now. Spy has finally gotten some kind of buff, well, rework. Glad to see it, because I really like Spy. I just feel like its benefit is so minor, and I just want it to be a little bit better, even just a little bit better, and I might try it. But anyway, now it's kind of different though, and I must admit, I do kind of miss the old effect, but at least this will almost certainly find more use in more decks. So I think this is overall positive, but I kind of wish they just did the old effect, but not as pathetic. Anyway, its new effect is that at the start of every 3 turns, instead of every 5 turns, you reveal the enemy hand, and you give the first spell revealed +1 cost. Now, the reason I'm a little bit against this is because the old spy used to be every 5 turns you would get a 0-cost card in your hand, which let you look at all cards in your opponent's hand and pick one to increase the cost of it by 1. Now, this was minor because, well, it was only +1 to their cost, and it was only 1 time every 5 turns. I mean, over the course of 10 turns, you would only manage to take 2 gold from your opponent, and that's optimistic. That's assuming they played both of their cost increased cards. Meanwhile, in that time, if you had Vitality, you would get another 10 added to your maximum health, you know. Or if you were a Doom, you would have silenced and killed everything on the board. Obviously, that's a little bit too long to wait to get any kind of advantage, really. So, all I wanted to see was even just something like give it +2 cost, or even better, every 4 turns you do it. Like, I don't know, just something like that I would have liked. I kind of don't like that this one has no decision-making factor. However, I do think that this is, as I say, better than keeping it the old way and just having it never be used. Thorn Ring got a completely new effect, which caught me off guard, I'm not going to lie, but I guess I'm behind it. It's now shock, gain a counter, so it doesn't matter the cost, you just cast a spell that costs 2 or more, and you have to get 10 counters to ever get any kind of effect off of this, which is pretty rough, but if you do get 10 counters, you earn 10 gold right there and there. Then. Bleh. This is interesting. I really can't speak on this because it depends what kind of combos we get, I suppose, but like, my gut feeling is this might actually be stronger than the last version of Thorn Ring we had. I'm not necessarily against it because it sounds like this might be more fun. And I don't know how strong the last version of Thorn Ring was, I guess. I shouldn't say that. But I would think the last version was less popular. Anyway, yeah, no, that might genuinely be a strong effect. It's just a little bit hard because I don't use legendary artifacts that much. And it's most of what's going into this is like, that's definitely worth it. But is it worth it to give up both of your... Sorry, when I say that's definitely worth it, I think it's definitely worth it to build a deck around this, and it's definitely worth it to have to cast 10 different spells that cost 2 or more at base for the sake of getting 10 counters so that you can get 10 gold. That's worth it. What I'm not sure is worth it is giving up all your artifacts for it. That's yet to be seen. Clanburger got an effect update, which I quite like actually overall. Instead of getting 1 gold at the start of the game, which was always going to be a very explosive and volatile effect, you now get 1 extra gold at the start of turn 3, 6, and 9. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Part of me wishes that the clock stopped a little bit earlier than 9, maybe like turn... I was going to say turn 4, 6, and 8, but starting on 4, I don't know, 3, 6, and 8. I know it's 3 every time. I think I would have liked 3, 6, 8, but either way, good change overall. Doom has now been nerfed, which actually caught me a little bit off guard, but I guess Stall. I don't know how bad Stall's been recently. At the start of every 12th turn now, instead of every 10th turn, you silence and kill all monsters. Arcane Scepter has been nerfed. That took a while, but we got there. Hopefully the game stops being quite so much of a clown fiesta now. You can no longer get the auto-cast arcane codes. This probably goes back to sucking now, but probably better than it being good. And Vitality. Finally. I never thought I'd see the day. Vitality has finally been nerfed. I'm not sure if this nerf will be the nerf we needed. We'll see. It's +7 health every 10th turn. I mentioned that, you might remember, I proposed that you have a shorter turn timer for a much smaller amount of health. Instead, we just gotten the smaller health, no shortening of the turn timer. We'll see how this pans out. But yeah, I'm happy with that change overall. So yeah, that's this patch. Oh yeah, I meant to say this at the start, but whatever. So I mentioned that I was going to do this all in one take, but I didn't say why from there. So if I do any more of these patch videos, which again, I'm kind of skeptical I will at this point, unless I have, again, a comeback to the game. If I do any more of these, I'm probably going to go back to having them be, you know, pretty kind of rushed out. I mean, I'm very transparent about this. This is definitely lower effort content, but there are other videos I put higher effort into. I just know that you guys like to hear about the new patches and all that. And this is like nice and easy to do to get a video out for the week. But the last few times, of course, I put a little bit more effort in. I've been having timestamps everywhere. I've been editing in music, and I've been editing in cuts if I ever get like tongue-tied or need to stop to look something up. Well, I'm not going to do that from here on out just because these videos are very time sensitive and I want to get them out as soon as possible. And as well as that, I found that with those like edits, it wasn't that much different for me having edited it. As I say, there was just some music, one or two cuts, and some timestamps. And yet, because obviously these videos tend to be quite long, that would usually entail like 3-4 hours worth of editing, and a lot of the time I wouldn't get that much out of it. So that's another reason why I'm, kind of doing this one unedited all in one take. Anyway, thank you for watching. I kind of forgot about the mid-season, so this I didn't mean to have two videos directly next to each other. If I had remembered, I probably would have held off on the Card City Nights video until later when I had more energy. Yeah, sorry if you could tell, I was quite low energy in that video. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.